Hello everyone. So I'm back, like I said, after 2 weeks from my last video. And in my last video, I talked about the Canon 70-200 f4, the original one, the non-image stabilized lens. And I told you guys that I had been hired to shoot a load of event photography, mostly sports. All of that was fantastic. The actual event, brilliant fun. The photographs I got, I think these are some of my favorites. I'm really proud of them, and I hope you guys like them because they're going up on social media sooner or later. But that's beside the point. The point of the last video was to discuss whether or not the f4 non-image stabilized 70-200 is still worth it in 2019 compared to the newer models like the newer Mark III f2.8 lens. Now I can definitely say that if it's all you can afford, yeah, you should get it. Think of it like this. There's a photographer out there, British photographer, Thomas Heaton. He does landscape photography with his 70-200 f4 non-image stabilized. And the reason he does that is because, well, the lens is sharp, it's known to be sharp, but also f4, you don't need an f2.8 and you don't need image stabilization if you're doing landscape photography because you're usually using a tripod with a long exposure. But in my use case scenario, the f4 was fine. It was fine, it wasn't perfect. I think that I definitely could have done with more light. The f4 was quite limiting, especially with the indoor photography, such as the swimming or with the tennis. Let me show you guys some before and after shots. So here are the raw images, yeah, and here are the edited images. Now, I think they look good, but obviously I've had to boost the exposure quite a bit. I had to raise the highlights, raise the shadows almost completely. And this introduces a lot of noise. And noise on social media isn't much of a problem, but it does mean that these images can't really be printed very well because that noise will then show up, or for example used in magazines like they are. I mean, that's what these images are for. They're for marketing material. Luckily for social media, they're perfectly fine because on social media, the size that you see an image is nowhere near its original size, and all the compression gets rid of most of the imperfections. So why do I say that the 70-200 f4 non-image stabilized lens isn't really perfect? Well, apart from the slightly smaller aperture of f4 compared to f2.8, the lack of image stabilization is actually something to note. In bright daylight, on bright days, in sunny weather, in sunny conditions and with no clouds, you can get away with shooting at 1/1000th of a second and getting really sharp, perfectly exposed images. But if you're using the lens indoors, like I was quite a lot, having to shoot at a high shutter speed to get rid of motion blur, which is what stabilization assists with, meant that I obviously lost a lot of exposure and I had to increase my ISO. What do I think of the lens's sharpness? Well, it's perfectly sharp. There's no problems with it. I think that's pretty much a fact. It's a sharp lens. Its other characteristics, well, okay, so something I noticed, and this might have just been my model, but something that I noticed was that in lower light, like outside playing in the first day on the Monday, in the cold weather and in the darker, light lit football pitch, the focus seemed to miss a lot more. Even on really bright sunny days like the cricket, and cricket is quite a slow game, so even on the cricket it tended to miss focus quite a bit. Now that could have been the lens, or it could have been the 1DX's superior focusing system, just choosing another location to focus rather than where I was trying to get it to focus. Because for most of this time shooting with it, I kept the lens on, I kept the camera on continuous area AF, so really the camera would choose where to focus, but as long as I kept the image in a particular box, it should be okay. And most of the images came out just fine. Bloody brilliant. Tended to sometimes back focus, It's okay, it's f4, so you have that leeway. If it was like this 50mm doing that with f1.8, you would miss a lot of shots more visibly because the depth of field would be so narrow that almost anything outside of the precise targeting, precise focusing range would just be a bloody mess. Now, onto video performance, which is what I'm particularly excited by. Although I know I got the lens for photography because that's what I was hired to do, I was also asked to take video. So here is some video footage, both in 4K, HD, and 4K 60 FPS. I didn't shoot any 120 slow-mo because the events that I was doing didn't call for it, but here are some of those shots now. And I think you'll agree that not only does the 1DX obviously do a good job, because that's what it's supposed to be good at, but the lens keeps up rather well. It does, I think, focus slower, quite smooth, which is nice, but slowly. Especially you can see here now in some of the crickets, when I had it completely out of focus and I hit record, it took quite a while for the lens to get into a sharp sort of on-target focusing range. But I think mixed with the Canon 1DX, to make it fair, it does have some of the best focusing systems in the world. I think the lens had all the help it could get, and I think this is just the raw performance of the lens. I think it's just a bit slow when it's gone from either infinity or from its closest distance to somewhere in the middle. I think it can take some time. One great thing about the lens though, compared to newer 2.8 versions, is definitely the weight. Being f4 and being non-image stabilized, sorry, get rid of something there. Being non-image stabilized meant that it was quite lightweight, and that meant that I could hand hold it, shoot quite easily, and I could, well, especially when I almost, get hit in the face by balls that come flying at me, whether it's been from American football, rugby, football, or tennis, or bloody whatever. As long as I can, move out of the way, it's all right, and I'm safe, and that's important. Be safe, kids, grown-ups. I don't know who listens to this. It also, I didn't manually focus much. I did do a bit of manual focus with the netball inside the Worcester Arena. That was interesting. The manual focus ring is accurate, and I like that you can pre-focus before you even turn the camera on. I like that. I like that it has the window, so you can see exactly where you're focused, compared to systems like Sony, which don't do that, and they rely on a complete electronic communication between the camera and lens. So I like some of these DSLR features, or some of these more primitive manual features. It was quite, I want to say, wacky. So you move it a little bit and the focus might go quite a bit, or you move it very slowly, it might move even slower than expected. So bear that in mind. Practice, obviously though, is key to that sort of stuff, because if you're using that lens a lot for film and you are constantly manual focusing, I'm sure you'll come to realize the characteristics of your particular lens and how much you have to move the rings for it to focus. All in all, I would say that it's comparable. It's not, however, a replacement. You can't not get a 2.8 if that's what you need. I know there's a lot of YouTubers out there, people, photographers, people I've watched who have said that an f4 is all you need. It's bull. It's not true. You do need an f2.8. If the things you're doing call for an f2.8, if you're shooting indoors, if you want the narrow depth of field, obviously with them being newer, they have some better features, they're better built and they're faster at focusing, but we'll forget those 2 points, just for the sake of argument. If what you're doing requires you to be able to fit into more scenarios, you need to be more flexible. And an f2.8 is also an f4, so get the f2.8 if you can. So what am I going to do? What am I going to do about this? Well, monitor's turned off, spooky. So what am I going to do about this? Well, I think I'm going to keep an eye out for any good deals. I think that the Canon brand of lens isn't needed. From what I've seen from Jared Polin and from other photographers, is that Sigma, the new Sigma Sport 70-200 f2.8 is almost as good as the Canon. And what I want is a great lens. I don't just want Canon. I want the best lens for the best price. So when I get my hands on that, when I get my hands on any future equipment, I'll be sure to review them for you as well. Now, I'm glad that I managed to do a part 2 to this, because it wouldn't have been fair to just leave you on the last one. But I do have some more equipment, and if you spot anything in a video, or if I talk about anything and I haven't said that I have plans to review it, please let me know in the comments below. And again, thank you all very much for watching.